on, guys? Good to have you back. I've been asked in many different ways about how to be creative. And I'm sorry to say, but unless you need to be creative, you're not gonna be creative. That's just kind of how humans work. If you find yourself in a lifestyle that does not require you to be creative, you're not going to grow up being creative. I mean, you can test yourself. You can grow up with a hobby to test your creativity, and in enjoying a hobby, you tend to find a need to want to do that hobby. And so in that, you can cultivate a need in a lifestyle that doesn't require a need for creativity. It's what a lot of people do when they find themselves in a sedentary lifestyle. You're just cruising along. Most everything is provided for you because you got your job, you got your bills paid, and you don't really need to worry about too much. There's not too much strife in your life, so you're just cruising along. If you don't need to be creative, you're not going to be. I developed my creativity out of necessity. When I took my hit to my noggin when I was a little kid, ever since then I've always had issues with impulses. From time to time they can get severe, but I learned throughout my life to curb these impulses through finding something creative to do. How do I describe this? When I was a child, I had a fever and my hands felt just like two balloons. I was taken to the doctor. My hands didn't really feel like two balloons. That was the lyrics to a song. I did have a fever. I was taken to the doctor and I got worked up and emotional. So emotional that I could not speak to the doctor. All I could do was scream. I had the ability to speak. I was, again, I got hit in the head about 6, 7 years old or so. This doctor's visit was around 8, 9. Anyways, I was so worked up and so emotional and so frightened that I lost the ability to speak. And all I could do was scream. Scream and grunt. And lash out physically. These were the impulses taking over, my irrational thought becoming severely irrational. Those were like the first indicators for me that my family and stuff like that, I needed to find a way to curb some kind of impulses and stuff. And so throughout my life, I learned how to curb these impulses to scream when I'm just so frustrated with stuff. You curb the impulse to scream and to breathing really deep, really hard. When it comes to wanting to give somebody a piece of my mind and the impulse overrides my ability to keep my mouth shut and it just wants to start flying out of my mouth, I've learned to override that impulse into writing it down. It's not coming out of my mouth. The impulse is redirected into my hands and just start writing it out. These impulses for me are unavoidable. I can have a storm of impulses triggered by anything emotional, even having my ego triggered. When I have my ego triggered, oh my God, dude, it inflates in a disastrous level and it just explodes all over the place. It's very embarrassing when it happens. So I've done my best throughout my life to find these impulses inside of me and channel them into other ways, and that's through creativity. Instead of screaming at somebody in my head, like I said, I channel it through my hands out onto paper. And later on in the revision process, I'm going through this story, this experience that I had, and I changed the names of the people. I changed the setting to be a little more appropriate to the impulse rant that just flew out, and I revised it to make it not so ranty. And yeah, you know, so a lot of the creativity comes through revising the madness that I throw out on paper. Let me show you guys something. This is the madness I throw out on paper. This is like decades worth of madness just thrown out on paper. And it's not all the notebooks I've had. These are just the ones with most important. See, like, say I would have this chunk of notebooks, and okay, it was full of ramblings and madness. I would go out and buy a new notebook, take a chunk of notebooks, take the best highlights and ideas and put them into the new notebook, and then chuck it. Chuck all the old ones. So all of these are condensed versions of all the notebooks that I have been making throughout my life. So if you want to be a creative person, you've got to find a need to be creative. That's really the only hint I can give to it. All these years later, coming to this point where I can finally like comfortably call myself a producer, I've seen that even the smallest creations can do a whole lot of good, as long as those creations have a meaning to them that adds benefit and value to those who experience it. I'm trying to be precise without being too nebulous. The item you create, it has to have benefit to those who experience it. I've seen the smallest things have the biggest benefits. They've happened virtually in front of my eyes. Let me tell you a little story here. I'm gonna ramble on a little about a story. I hope you guys hang in for it. It's about a cappuccino. I love cappuccinos. Cappuccinos are near and dear to my heart, and this story is one reason why. You see, I got my start in coffee. Am I 17 years old? I was 17 years old when I got my start in coffee in 1997. I worked for a place called BADDEC Cafe in San Juan Capistrano up to 2000. See, the place called BADDEC Cafe. It was a pretty large chain, and I had the opportunity, the fortunate opportunity, to meet Martin BADDEC himself, the owner of the chain. And not only did I get to meet him, I got to like be part of this impromptu. It was, how do I describe this? Okay, like I'm just working the barista, little old freaking, how old am I at this point? 19 years old at this point. I just made it to night manager of the store. I'm starting my shift. The boss, my normal boss, comes in and he's all excited. He's like, dude, Jim, all right, so Martin BADDEC just landed at John Wayne Airport like an hour ago, and he wants me and the other managers, he wanted him and the other managers to pick the person that he liked most in the store and take them up there, and he picked me. Yeah, I was just freshly promoted, you know, fresh face, not so fresh now. I had hair back then. Oh my God, I had such gorgeous hair back then. But I digress. So I go to this corporate office in Irvine here in California for BADDEC's Coffee, and there is Martin BADDEC. I shake his hand. I meet him, a really congenial guy, and he proceeds to tell us this story. He was a really good storyteller. I can't really recount it. I'm not going to be able to recount it word for word, do it justice at all, but here it is in a nutshell. He spent 2 months in Italy learning all he could about making coffee the way that they made it in Italy. Not currently, but back in the day. See, there is this beautiful machine that he had lined up behind him. It did not look like a new machine at all. It was a La Mazorca machine, bad with the pronunciation. Old steam powered machine, nothing automatic about it, everything was manual. And he sat there and he taught us one by one, individually, on a one-by-one basis, how to make a cappuccino from the old world. Old world cappuccino. Oh my God. My friends, if you've not had an old world cappuccino, fantastic. So, years later, I'm working for Starbucks. Okay, I'm working for the Green Siren. And they have their way of making cappuccinos, which is they put the espresso in the bottom of the cup, and then they just pour everything on top of it and send it on its way. The way I was taught to make a cappuccino is you put the espresso in the bottom of the cup, and you take a wide ladled spoon and you pour the crema over the top of the spoon, and the spoon helps the milk and the froth separate as it drains over the top of the espresso, and you get a beautiful layer of, this dark espresso on the bottom, and then a little bit of chocolatey espresso and milk in the center, and a wonderful froth foam crown. Ooh, God, I want one so bad right now. Anyways, I'm working for Starbucks, and they've got me making cappuccinos this way. Here you go, set it on, set it on, set it off. One day, this lady comes up, and I can tell that she's a little, not upset about things, but a little forlorn about things. And so I'm asking her what's up. She's like, I'm going to meet my friend in the hospital. They're not doing too well. They just had a fall. And so I'm taking her a cappuccino. It's one of her favorite drinks. And I'm like, ladies, say no more. I got you. I didn't make it the Starbucks way. I made it the way I learned how to make it. Sent it off with her, with my salutations and best wishes to her friend. It's not even like 2 days later, she comes back in the store and she's down in the dumps. And she comes up to me and she says, I don't know if you remember me. You get so many customers. I understand if you don't remember me. And I looked at her, I was like, no, miss, I remember you absolutely. Your friend in the hospital. How are they? And they passed away. And she was struggling to say it, and I didn't make her say it. I just said, I said, can I give you a hug? And she needed one, and I gave her a hug. Anyways, so I sit her down and I get her talking about her friend and the good times and stuff, trying to get her out of the dumps. And thankfully, I'm not the only person working the kiosk. There's somebody to be able to take care of the customers while I'm talking to this lady. She tells me that she took the cappuccino to her friend, and her friend remarked that it was the best cappuccino that she had had in a long time. And, for my little part, awesome, cool. I helped her have a cappuccino like she hadn't had in a long time. Cool. But more importantly, they sat there drinking that cappuccino while this lady is basically holding on for life. They didn't know she was holding on for life. She took a spill. She was in the hospital okay, and then she was dead. So she's sitting there having this cappuccino with her friend, and they're recounting all these times back in the day around the table over good coffee. And it dawned on me. My one small little coffee, cappuccino from the old world, helped these two people have a warm and enjoyable moment when this lady was laying at the cold door of death. When most people are sitting there frightened about what's going to happen, death coming and touch them on their shoulder, they're alone and frightened in that cold moment they die alone. She wasn't alone. She was surrounded by the memories and the ghosts of all those people long past, all those friends she couldn't have conversations with anymore, with that coffee and that memory. In a small little twisted way, I feel like my little coffee helped her find a piece of heaven just before passing. So, I've found a need to create. Because I've learned that even the smallest things can lead to, the biggest benefits for those who experience it. Thanks for watching, guys.